Hello and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now 2024 has been the year of the facelifted Volkswagen Group hot hatch, which is no bad thing because for a lot of other manufacturers, 2024 has been the year they've deleted all the hot hatches from their ranges. So far this year we've had the Audi Rs3, the Golf GTI and GTI Club Sports. We've had the Golf R with its new black edition derivative, and now bringing up the rear we have the new, well, facelifted Audi Rs3. Now, the previous generation car, which this one has a lot in common with, arrived in the UK in late 2021 and was caught up in the supply issues caused by COVID lockdowns and the war in Ukraine that affected nearly all car manufacturers. And as a result, that will always be a very rare car. Hopefully, the new model won't be affected by things like that, but I think it's still going to remain quite a rare car, because it is now quite a bit more expensive than the old one. Compared to the prices at launch back at the end of 2021, the new model is £8,500 more. Yes, there are a few things you get as standard now that you didn't get before, but that still means that the top spec carbon Vorsprung model is just a few £100s shy of breaking through that 70,000 barrier. And if you add the now available, very desirable bucket seat option, you'll be well into the 70s. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at the Audi UK RS3 configurator and see if there is any way a hot hatch can justify a price tag beginning with a 7. But before we get started, let me just remind you guys how you can support the channel. The easiest way to do that is simply to subscribe. We're getting a lot of views from non-subscribers. It's brilliant to get those views. But if you're one of those and you like what you see, then please do subscribe. If you have already subscribed, then thank you very much. It's really appreciated. Okay, before we have a closer look at the 3 different models that make up the new RS3 range, let's just talk about the key facts that affect every model in the range. As before, we have a 5-door hatchback, which Audi call the Sportback, and we have a saloon RS3 as well. That costs £1,000 more than the Sportback. Now, this video is primarily about the Sportback because that's the biggest seller in the UK by far, but pretty much everything I say about the Sportback crosses over to the saloon, whether it would be the colour choice, the spec, the options, and the performance. And yeah, there isn't really an awful lot to say about the performance because that is identical to the old RS3. So 400 metric horsepower, 395 brake horsepower, 500 Newton meters of torque, and disappointingly, that's produced at the same point in the rev range. So I think it's safe to say there has been zero development to the engine. 0 to 62 time is still 3.8 seconds, which is still really impressive. Golf R is somewhere in the low 4s, mid to low 4s. But with no development of the engine, somehow the MPG and the CO2 emissions have got worse. We've still got the torque splitting rear differential made by Magna, which was primarily introduced for the RS3 to quell understeer, which is an unfortunate characteristic of having quite a big engine, 5-cylinder engine, ahead of the front axle. So whilst it's nice to have it in a Golf R, it's kind of essential to have it in the RS3. Okay, prices, well, as I mentioned earlier, they're up £8,500 compared to the old one when it was launched in 2021. You do now, though, get quite a bit as standard, so it's not as bad as it seems, and factor in inflation, which has been quite rampant over those 3 years. It's probably okay, but as I said, 70k is not far away for any model, really, once you put a few options on it. But that does mean now you also get adaptive cruise control as standard, which for people that have grown up with the Golf, that have had that standard in nearly every model for like 12 years now, that's quite important. You don't have to have the Vorsprung. To get that, you get the head-up display, which is a nice touch. You get the rear camera. You also get the sports exhaust, and you get the B&O premium sound system. The configurator also suggests, but sometimes it's wrong, that you get RS branded floor mats, which will liven up that interior no end. And the good news is, you're not forced to have the round steering wheel that looks like the tiller of a ship if you have the assistance pack. So that's definitely progress. We've also got progress with the interior because before, full leather was standard in the UK. For a no-cost option, you could have the part, well, it wasn't really leather at all. I think it was like a vegan interior. So it had recycled bottles used to make a microfiber centre section of the seat, and I think the outer bits were like fake leather. That was a no-cost option. In Germany, they charge you more for the leather, so you'd be crazy to choose that. It really wasn't up to scratch for a car that was, 60 grand or thereabouts. So that's gone now. Leather is standard. And the good news is there is now an option to have bucket seats. So if you want a more grippy fabric, you're forced into the bucket seats. They're not actually that expensive. So 2.5 grand on the base model and the carbon black model, and 2 grand on the carbon Vorsprung. Other signs that Audi UK have listened to us when we talked about the interior not being up to scratch and not even allowing us to pay extra for a nicer interior is that they've given us now the option of 3 different stitching for the seats. It's a minor thing, but it does make a difference. So standard is black stitching on black seats, or you can have green, or you can have red. So you need to choose those carefully based upon the exterior colour, but it's nice to have the choice, and it's a no-cost option. Now all cars get 19-inch wheels, and they're all 9 inches at the front and 8 inches at the back, so wider at the front, and you get 2 6.5 30 19 tyres at the front and 2 4.5 35 19 at the rear, and the configurator lists Bridgestone or Pirelli as the factory fit tyre. Now let's talk about the colours, because there's quite a bit of choice and some of it's quite expensive. It's the first time I've seen Audi do this, but they mixed up some of the Audi exclusive colours into the normal configurator colours. So you can click on one, it's £595, or it's free even, and then you click on the other one and it's 4 grand. So for example, Mythos Black is £595, but if you want Panther Black, which is a crystal effect colour, it's £4,000. Kimura Grey is a lovely colour. I think that came on the old RS3. It was launched originally on the facelifted R8 back in 2019. There's a new one called Cumulus Blue, which looks like crystal meth blue on the Golf, and it's a solid colour, by the way. It's 4 grand. Python Yellow is £595, and the configurator for some reason pushes you into that. It's the default colour on the configurator, which is really annoying. The Vegas Yellow, which is another R8 colour, a solid colour, 4 grand. Daytona Grey, that classic colour, £595. But if you want other classic colours like Misano Red, which is a metallic red, Sepang Blue, Merlin Purple, you're looking at £4,000. Ascari Blue, which I think was an RS6 Performance C7 colour, it's a bit of a duller blue than Sepang, £895. Ipanema Brown, 4 grand extra, take off 4 grand from the value of your car when you come to sell it. And there's a beautiful colour called Cuvée Silver for £4,000 as well, but I don't think I could really justify that, however good it looks. There's also the option to have a matte paint finish for £5,000 as well. The good news is there are 2 standard free colours, and the RS3 looks brilliant in either of them. We've got Arcona White and we've got Kyalami Green. Okay, now let's have a look at the 3 models that make up the new RS3 range. Well, the big news is that every model in the new RS3 range has got the black styling pack. So gone is the entry-level car with its matte aluminium inlays and its pretty silver and diamond cut lattice wheels, which was actually my favourite model in the range. I nearly ordered that car in Kimura Grey, but I just couldn't justify that level of monthly payment for a car with an interior that I didn't particularly like. Well, now Audi have improved the interior, but unfortunately, if you want an RS3, you have to have the gangster spec of black styling. So for the base model, which is now £59,510, you get the old style Y-spoke wheels in black, which were standard on the old carbon model. You get non-matrix LED headlights, which are an updated design. You get microfiber inlays on the dash, which I had on the S3 test car a few weeks ago, and that actually lifted the interior more than you might think. You get gloss black exterior styling, including the door mirrors, and you now have the option of spending £2,500 on the very nice looking bucket seats. But the bad news is that you can't combine those with the almost essential Tech Pack Pro. So that's a £3,050 bundle that gets you matrix LED headlights, panoramic glass sunroof, it gets you keyless entry, not just keyless go, it gets you electric adjustment for the front seats with memory function for the driver's seat and the door mirrors. It gets you the self-dipping rearview mirror and a few other bits. You really need that, but if you really want the bucket seats, unfortunately, for some reason, you can't combine them. I appreciate that there is going to be an overlap with the seats because you've paid extra to have electric adjustment of the seats. But on the Vorsprung, you can have the bucket seats, you just lose the electric adjustment. So it is possible, but I think it's another way in which Audi are forcing us towards the Vorsprung. More on that later. And even if you do stretch to the Vorsprung, you still can't have the carbon ceramic brakes, at least not here in the UK, even though they were shown on some of the cars at the recent international launch. There are some options as well that are standalone, which is unusual in this day and age really. So you have the no-cost option of going for body-coloured mirrors if you don't like the gloss black. You can have black roof rails for £295. You can have red brake calipers for £300. You can have the sunroof on its own for £1,200. You can have some extra airbags for £340. And you can have a toolkit and jack for £25, which sounds cheaper than they sell for on eBay, which is unusual. And there's Isofix and iSize for no-cost options as well. But you can't spec adaptive dampers, which for the UK, with our rubbish roads and standard 19-inch wheels, I think you're going to need. So yeah, if you want that, guess what you have to do? Yes, we'll talk about that later. Okay, on to the carbon black then. So this is £64,160. That's £4,650 more than the base model. What does that get you? I hear you say, well, you now get silk matte grey wheels. They're called a 10 cross-spoke design, and they've got the same size tyres as the ones on the base model, so there's nothing's really changed. It's just a nicer design. I like them a lot. They're a bit of a Lamborghini style wheel, which I think looks fantastic, much better than all the stuff that's been on a lot of cars for many years now. You get the LED matrix headlights, you get carbon inlays inside, you get carbon and gloss black outside as well, carbon mirror casings, you get a trick carbon roof spoiler, and you get a carbon engine cover as well. You have the option of speccing the bucket seats for £2,500, but as before, that means you can't have the Tech Pack Pro. And the Tech Pack Pro is a little bit cheaper. It's £2,210 because you get LED matrix lights as standards. The standalone options are exactly the same as the base model, but you don't have the option of body-coloured mirrors, which were a no-cost option because presumably you wouldn't want to give up your lovely carbon mirrors. Okay, now on to the range-topping carbon Vorsprung, which is 68,650 of your pounds. That's a 9,140 premium over the base RS3 and 4,490 more than the carbon black. Well, what does that get you? Well, it gets you the option to have an RS3 with adaptive dampers. The Vorsprung is the only model that allows that. It also allows you to have the contents of the Tech Pack Pro and have the bucket seats, so they're £2,000 extra. Obviously you lose the electric adjustment and the memory function of the seats if you go for that. You also get diamond cut wheels, so the same style as the carbon black, but they are black wheels with diamond cut faces, which look really smart. You get LED matrix headlights as standard, just like with the carbon black. You get the panoramic glass sunroof. You get the electric seats with memory function for the driver's seat and the door mirrors, as long as you don't have the buckets. You get keyless entry as well as keyless go. You get B&O premium sound, well, they all get that. You get adaptive cruise, which is standard on all of them, but you get the emergency assist function, which will safely take your car to the side of the road should you pass out at the wheel. There's no Tech Pack Pro option available on the Vorsprung because all the components of that are standard, but you do get the same standalone options as the base model, apart from you can't order a sunroof because that's part of the standard spec of the Vorsprung. For some reason, they don't let you have the black roof rails for £295. That's interesting. And again, you don't have the option to spec body-coloured mirrors because you get the carbon mirrors as standard. Okay, so yeah, they're all quite expensive. Maybe they can redeem themselves with the finance like the S3 did against the Golf R. Now, because I reckon quite a few of you guys will be equally considering a Golf R Black Edition with quite a few options, as well as an Audi RS3 Vorsprung, I thought it would be a good exercise to spec up a Golf R Black Edition as close to that of the spec of an RS3 Vorsprung and see what the finance comes out as. So, base price of a Golf R Black Edition, £45,145. I think if you add DCC to that car, you've got a really great package for not a lot of money. You get the performance pack as part of the Black Edition pack. So yeah, it's a pretty impressive car. But to match the Vorsprung, we've had to add metallic, because when you do an Audi finance quote, it always adds metallic, £730 for the black. I've added the leather interior because the RS3 is leather, that's £2,415. It gives you electric driver's seat, and I think it gives you memory as well. I've added DCC for £720 to match the RS3's adaptive dampers. Panoramic glass sunroof, £1,220. Carbon, you can spec carbon on the Golf R now, £790. Well, the RS3 Vorsprung's got loads of it outside as well. Head-up display standard on the RS3, £580. And to get as close as possible, but maybe not close enough, to the RS3's Bang & Olufsen system, I've added the Harman Kardon for £600. That makes the Golf R Black Edition, the spec, £52,200 versus £69,245 for the RS3 Vorsprung. So about £17,000 difference. Well, how does that compare when it comes to finance? Let's start off then with the Golf. So we're going to do, for both cars, a 48-month term, 10,000 miles per year, and a deposit of £9,000. Some of you have criticised me for putting £9,000 in as a deposit, possibly because that's higher than most people put in, but that was actually the figure Volkswagen quoted as the default deposit if you did a finance quote on the Golf R. So when I was using that to compare it with the Golf GTI, I had to put £9,000 in for that as well. And actually, I did that for the GTE as well. I don't think it's unreasonable to put that kind of money in. You could have it as a part X on your old car, or you could have it as equity on your old car as well, if you're kind of lucky. The crazy days of 22, 23 for that are gone now. But anyway, you can alter that yourself on the website. I'm just using £9,000, so I'm consistent with every car that I get a quote for. Volkswagen also give you a deposit contribution of £2,500. That's effectively a discount off the price. So that gives you £11,500 deposit. Their APR is 7.5%, which is better than Audi's 8.9%. That gives you a monthly payment for what, remember, is quite a high spec car, £605.46, which I don't think is that bad, especially when you compare it to the Audi, which is, again, 48 months, 10,000 miles per year, £9,000 deposit. There's no deposit contribution. As I said, the APR is quite a bit higher. So that makes £844.92 per month. That's £240 more than the very high spec Golf R Black Edition, which is in itself a very complete car. So why do you need to spend £240 more on the RS3? Well, you get a more prestigious badge with those 4 rings on the nose. You get gorgeous carbon on the outside, including stunning tailgate spoiler. But I think most of that premium goes towards what's under the bonnet. It's remarkable Volkswagen Group are making so many 4-cylinder hot hatches, but the fact they make one 5-cylinder hot hatch is even more remarkable. And because it's quite a low volume seller, and because it's going against sort of the current legislation, I think the costs to produce and develop this car are quite high per unit of the cars they sell. So I think being such a niche product, you're just paying a lot for the exclusivity, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite niche at these prices. So yes, it's a much rarer car as well. Obviously, it's got a lot more character. The 5-cylinder engine sounds spectacular, but it's not all good. Firstly, the gearbox, if it's the same as the old one, and there's nothing in the stats to say it's any different, it's not a particularly slick gearbox. It's not as slick as the 7-speed ones that we have in the Golf. It's a little bit clunky, a little bit slow at times. The torque splitter does help with understeer, but if you go into a corner too fast and come off the gas, the RS3 is going to understeer a lot more than a Golf R. The torque splitter only helps if you get on the gas and try and get the torque vectoring to turn the car from the rear, and you've got to have big kahunas to do that on the public road. And do you need more performance than the Golf R? That's something else that you've got to ask yourself. So I think it's an incredible car, but £70,000 is a lot of money. It's going to take a lot more effort to buy 2 second-hand cars instead of one RS3, but just think what you could buy. You could buy a nearly new S4 TDI for, I don't know, £50,000. That leaves you 20 to go and buy something that sounds even better than the RS3 and handles better than the RS3, a 981 Porsche Boxster S. You've got a daily there, you've still got Quattro, you've still got torque vectoring if you get the sport diff on the S4, and you've got one of the best sports cars in the world. As ever guys, thanks for watching this Volkswagen video. Keep commenting, keep subscribing, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.